Okay, so as you can see, we're continuing to improve our technology a little bit, so hopefully the board looks quite less distorted as it had been before, so hopefully you'll be able to do that. Appreciate that we're kind of fine-tuning as we go. Today what I want to do is to talk about your outlines that you submitted for your elevator speech, and I just want to give you some general feedback and some pointing of information that you can go to for more help, etc. I also am going to actually show you, I won't show you here, but I will point to in Moodle a sample student elevator speech that was submitted actually by one of your classmates that was just outstanding. And it can be served to you to look at to compare what you submitted to what that outline looked like to try and make even more sense of the feedback that I gave you in the grading, all right? I want to remind you that your special occasion outline draft, all right, is due on the 30th. Now, a draft means that it should be about 90 to 95% perfect, okay? So you really should have put in or invested quite a bit of time in it so that it looks like the sample elevator speech that I've posted, and you can visually look at it, and we're going to go over a couple of more clarity as we continue to do that, all right? Now it's a draft, so I'm going to give you feedback, but it will not be for recorded grade. So I'm going to give you feedback so that you can see what your grade would be if that's what you submitted for grade, all right? But I want you to go back and make edits and all those kinds of changes so that when it comes time to deliver your speech, actually to rehearse and then deliver your speech, it's all going to start to fit together and you're going to have a high degree of comfort and it's going to start making sense. All right. So that means then that today what we're going to do is actually I'm going to give you a lecture, and if you want to open up your textbooks, and I recommend that you do, or your resource book, turn in there to chapter 18, all the way in the back of that resource book, because I'm going to highlight in there what are many of your options, what's your purpose, what are you trying to achieve with this kind of a speech. I want to give you some do's and don'ts as well, because a lot of people don't do these right, and so I want to give you some guidelines for that. We're definitely going to be looking at the top part of your speech because I want you to understand how you lay it out, and along with that, some needed elements that you must have for all speeches, all right, regardless of the kind of speech it is. I'm going to give you some of those elements. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. Before I go into that, again, let me ask, did Mr. Wood come in? Did Ms. White come in? Somebody just came in. Could you tell me your name, please?
Chambers.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Shookwell Chambers. Chambers is my last name.
Are you supposed to be in public speaking?
Yeah.
Okay, and are you supposed to be in H01B? Or did you happen to come in register late?
I didn't register, but I did miss the first day of class.
So your last name is Jen. Okay, stick around, all right? And we'll talk after class and try and figure it out, all right? So thank you. Okay. So first thing I want you to do is go into your laptops or your cell phones, go into the orientation section of your Moodle course, scroll down to find the sample student elevator speech. Sample student elevator speech. And I want you to open that. I'll give you a moment to do that. Now, generally speaking, in looking at most of your outlines, you did a pretty good job. There are a couple of problem areas, and so I want to address those for you now so that you know what the world you're doing. So specifically, as you can see at the top of this outline, there is a section above the introduction that has all of the general context information about your speech. Not content so much as context, all right? So every speech at the top, and you could actually flip these. This student's specific purpose to inform could actually be the general purpose, okay? So the top two sometimes can be interchanged a little bit, but the idea here is that you start broad. So generally, the general purpose statement is to inform, to educate, or what have you. I want you for the upcoming speech, because we're going to be talking about the special occasion speech today. I want you for your general purpose is to entertain. All right. So that's the first thing you're going to do is your GP is to entertain. Now, that's important because there's some elements for entertaining that we don't use for some of the other parts of our speeches. Could I ask the person closest to the door to please close our door for us? Thank you very much. Now, so that's broad, entertain. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the specific purpose, and that specific purpose for your speech is going to be the kind of speech you're going to do. So you're going to entertain by giving us perhaps a eulogy. So there's a different types to entertain or to help people feel good or to help people. Actually, you can look at it from when we look at entertainment speeches, we want to achieve two goals. All right, so let me pull that up. I'm going to switch over now to the textbook, the reference book. All the way down to number 18. Chapter 18. So this might be in your specific to captivate, to grab the attention of the audience for whatever's going to come next. Or it might be to amuse, all right, to add some humor, to make things funny, to warm up the crowd, so to speak, okay? And so those are your primary sub-points. Now, as you can imagine, if you're doing a eulogy, you probably going to focus more on captivate. Although my daughter gave the most amazing, humorous, amusing eulogy to my mother at my mother's funeral, because that's the kind of relationship she had with her grandma. And it was exactly what was needed for the audience to feel good about the event or the ceremony. All right? So that takes you into then your thesis statement. And your thesis statement now should give real information about the setting. So here it might be to eulogize the life, all right, or to celebrate the life of a person, and you're going to use a person's name, the real name, all right, to eulogize the life of. And then, so again, we're getting very specific. We're narrowing it down. Okay. And usually when you do that, you're going to have main points. So in the main points, when you are doing your thesis statement, we also call these preview of your main points. You're going to say what? Okay. So my daughter said to utilize the life of grandma by showcasing her art, her accomplishments, and her travels. All right, and so that then tells you what you're going to do in the remainder of your outline. So that main point number 1 is going to be about the person's art. Main point number 2 is going to be the many awards, accomplishments, accolades, honors that she received. And this one is going to be talking about all the many travels that she did. And how you order these is going to be strategic on how you want to do that. All right. So that's part of the thesis statement. So you're narrowing it down more and more, and you're going to give the agenda, so to speak, of what you're going to be talking about. Okay. From there, you go into, you're going to talk about either visual aids or props. Even if you have 0, you still write this and you say none. All right? And then right under that, you're going to use stage directions. Now, one of the things you're going to realize as we go through this semester is that there are lots of different kinds of stage directions that you personally may want to use that are part of your personas, part of your content of the speech, or the feeling that you're trying to create, etc. But these are really reminders just to yourself. So if you know that you need to worry about time, that you don't go too long, then a stage direction for you might be to note time and stick to 90 seconds. All right? So that's a reminder. So right before you stand in front of the audience, you now have a stage direction as a reminder, so that you know what you're doing and you don't want to lose sight of that. Now, or another type of stage direction might be don't read word for word, or avoid saying So whatever it might be as a special direction to you, okay? Now, close that down, that speech, what the student did, and you can look at that all on your own, but you have now got all of the elements to do that. So now what I want you to do is to go into the orientation section of your Moodle course, and I want you to pull up I want you to download or pull up or open, whatever you want to do, under orientation, the grading rubric for all speech outlines. Okay, now, this is your check sheet. Literally, before you submit an outline for grade or feedback or comment, or even send it to me in an email asking me to preview it and give you some general comments, you need to go through this document as a checklist. Does everybody have it open on your laptops or your phones? Can everybody see it? All right, good. So what you see is that there's 3 sections, all right? It is landscape. Over here, there's a little bit, and then there's dot, and dot, and there's a line, and then there's a dot, and dot, line, dot, 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 kind of thing. All right. So in these sections, this is what your speech is going to be all about. And we're going to have another one. So this section that I just went over is at the very top, and it says your general outline. So this is really the mechanics, right? Does it look like it's supposed to look? So you see over on the left, it has some things that you got to make sure you do. And if those items are missing, you're going to lose points and get a needs improvement. So for instance, do you have every section of your speech? Now here's the sections for every speech. You need to have references. They're usually at the very bottom. You don't even have to have a separate page. Just list your references at the bottom of your page. Then you're going to have an intro. You're going to have a body, which is going to be the bulk of your outline. And then you're going to have a conclusion. Okay? So, do you have all of these listed? And even for your speech you're doing for the special occasion, please, please, include at least one reference, even if it's a quote, even if it's brainy quotes, right? Just at least one reference, okay? All right, so it's, are all the sections there? Did you use proper outline numbering and lettering? All right, so let's go through that. You have a video that I posted that talks you through how to set up your Microsoft Word for doing the proper outlining. Because if you just go and use the default settings in Microsoft Word, it will not be correct, okay? The sample outline that is posted there will show you exactly how to do that, right? So, first thing you do is the word introduction has no numbering and no lettering, all right? Underneath that, you're going to start with Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, all right? And I'm going to show you how that works in a moment. With that Roman numeral, then you're good. At that point, you're going to write a transition, ... with some kind of a sentence or a short phrase to guide your audience into the next part of your speech. Now, you don't say, well, now let's talk about our main points. No. You might say something like, so my first point, or the first thing I'd like to talk about, or let's take a look at this in more detail, however kind of transition you want. Now, this is where it gets tricky, all right? Because now you're going to have the body. And again, no outline is needed. At this point, you're going to have Roman numeral 1, and you're going to have main point. Okay, so 1 means you're going to have main point 1. If we look up here, and she's going to talk about a person's art, that's going to be your main point 1. And you're just going to say art. Right? Just boom, fast. Doesn't have to be a sentence. Then, it could be a sentence, but it doesn't have to be. Then, capital A. So let's say the art is going to be watercolor. Maybe it's going to be B. It'll talk about her pen and ink. And under this one, now watch what I'm going to do. This is a Roman numeral. So now what I'm going to do is regular, traditional 1. And now we're going to say something like sizes, and maybe talk a little bit about where they are shown in Los Angeles, and then maybe 3, something else. All right? That's all you're going to need for this speech. Afterwards, you might do a little A and a little B, but you won't need it for this speech. Okay? You might not even need very much of that. So now you go into Roman numeral 2, and this is going to be, and you can say main point 1 if you wanted to, main point 2 if you wanted to. And then over here now, I'm going to talk about accomplishments. I'm just going to write that. Okay? And then you're going to say senior of the year, going to be something like a Golden Globe Award for X movie, you know, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And then 3, and you probably will never have more than 3 for this class because our speeches are too short. Okay? So 3 then might be main point 3 and the travels, blah, blah, blah. All right? Now, at that point, we're going to do a transition again. All right? So some of these are just standard operating procedures. We're just going to put transition. I actually like to write my transitions in italics. All right? So a transition statement to guide the audience now into the conclusion. And you can say in conclusion, or to wrap things up, or to bring our talk to a close. Okay, so there's lots of different phrases that you can do that, but you're signaling to your audience that you're now going into your conclusion, and that's very important. All right, because they like to know where you are in your speech. You're going to give a transition, and then you're going to have, again, Roman numeral 1, and you're going to do a summary or review of the main points. You're going to do a memorable thought, okay? And a memorable thought might be a quote. It might be going back to what's up here, whatever it might be. And then you're going to do a thank you. And for this speech, you're done. You're not going to invite questions, okay? So up here, always make sure that you have your name and your greeting, all right? And I'm going to mix up these because this part does not have to be in a particular order. They just need to be there. So look under the section on this rubric under introduction, and it says greeting, and then it says attention getter, all right? We're going to put in credibility. We're going to do a thesis statement and preview. Oh, and relevance. And relevance. So now let me explain what all those mean. The attention getter is just that. And in your resource book, it gives you lots of ideas. But it might be something as simple as, the attention getter was, when I traveled with Grandma, everybody thought I was the tour guide instead of her granddaughter, because I was the one hurting everybody, doing blah, 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 blah. Okay. Or it might be a statistic. My grandma traveled to over 60 countries from the time she would turn 40 until the time of her death at 82. Okay, that's a startling statistic. So you're going to do some kind of an attention getter to go like, people are going to go like, whoa, this sounds interesting. I want to pay attention. All right. At some point, you have to establish your credibility. So hopefully you watched the video of the lesson that I gave last class. And in that, I talked about how we learned from Aristotle that you have to establish credos. You have to let people know what gives you the right to talk about a topic. In which case, then my daughter would talk about, being a 40-year-old woman and spending all this time with her grandma. Living right down the street. She used to take her to and from high school, blah, blah, blah. So you have to do that. You also have to establish relevance. And relevance, okay, now this gets really confusing for people. So if you don't understand, raise your hand. Relevance is how is listening to the talk, the speech, going to be relevant to the audience member? How is it going to be important to the audience members? I like to use the phrase, what's in it for me? WIIFM. So if I'm sitting in the audience, like you're doing right now, you're all sitting in the audience and you're thinking, what's in it for me to be here today, to be listening? So hopefully you are seeing relevance, that you are learning how to do your outline for the next speech assignment. That's what you're getting out of it. That's what's in it for you, all right? So that's how you want to think of it, is you want to make sure that your talk, it has a high degree of importance, of relevance, application to your audience members, okay? And you got to put that in there, okay? So we'll do that. All right, your thesis and your preview, we already went over that, but always make sure that you have a preview where you think of it as your table of contents of your speech, so your audience knows what are the main points you're going to be talking about, but you don't say main points. You just say, I want to talk about these things in relationship to grandma. Now, when you are wrapping up your speech, now think of it this way. Your audience does not have a copy of your speech. The only exception to that is if you're president of the United States or governor or somebody who does a press release by sending out in advance the speech, a hard copy of it. Most people don't do that, right? So your audience is going to depend on you for verbal clues all the way through your speech. They're going to depend on you for understanding how your information connects together, right? So here's how you pointedly make connections for them. Your attention getter in nearly all speeches should directly connect to the memorable thought at the end of your speech. Should be the same, okay? Let me tell you about this crazy lady. And by the way, that's what we called Mary Lou Carter. She was the crazy lady in the family, blah, blah, blah. So let me close by saying something that the crazy lady who we always have loved used to tell all of us when times were hard. Her famous quote was, "This too shall pass." So this hurt that we're feeling today in her loss, this too shall pass. Okay? Pregnant pause, and thank you. Okay, so you see how these always connect. Oh, but we're not done connecting. The other thing that you want to make sure that you connect is your preview to the summary or review of what you just talked about. Wrapping everything up. This is what you said at the beginning, and now you're going to bring it back and bring closure to everything. All right. Now, I said that your audience needs for you to guide them. So how do you guide them? Well, you guide them with transitions. A transition is different from a signpost. So a signpost is going to go from here to here and from here to here. This is what's known as a signpost. The difference is a transition goes from the introduction into the body. And then it goes from the body into the conclusion. That's a transition. A signpost is only used within the body of your speech, all right? And a signpost is going to be, first, I'm going to be talking about this. Next, the word next is a sign, or the second thing to consider is a sign, or now that I've given you all the problems, here is the solution. That's a signpost, all right? So signposts are always going to be just an insert like you did with the transition, all right, to guide them into the next sections. Those are required. You always have to have them no matter how big or how small your speech is, okay? So let's go back by looking at the outline rubric. I talked about making sure that you've got all these elements there. I talked about that you have proper outlining and numbering and lettering. And make sure that you use what are called labels. GP, general purpose, that's a label. Always have it. SP, label, always have it. I always put those in bold because it serves as a mnemonic for my brain to know I'm not going to say that, but that's what I'm doing. That's my purpose. Okay. Name and greeting, attention getter, that's a label. These are all labels. Label, label. Points will be taken off if you don't have those labels. Main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. Those are labels. Now you don't have to do sub points. You don't have to go that far. That's like craziness. But you do have to do at least main point 1, main point 2, main point 3. Your summary review is a label. The memorable thought is a label. And the thank you or Q&A is a label, right? So make sure that everything is labeled and it's indented. So do you see how I've got indenting going on here? So this is indented under here, this is indented under here, and this is indented under here. That's why you have to set up your Microsoft Word correctly. And that's why you need to watch that video for how to do it. All right. So let's see. So in the introduction is all the things that you need to cross off to make sure you've done. Make sure that you've added some creativity in everything that you do. I'm going to talk about attributions next class. I'm going to talk a little bit more about CRAP in terms of those attributions. Hopefully you saw the video from last class where I went through the whole concept of CRAP. And the meat text, down at the bottom under conclusion, all those elements are there. So, check, you got that. Check, you got that. Got them all there in your outline before you send them to me. Okay. References, if you look back up at the reference, it says if you only list a URL, the HTTP, blah, 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 that is not a reference. That is not citing a source. You will need to use EasyVib or any of those other little tools so that you're able to actually do a source citation. They should be, my recommendation is APA. If you are more comfortable with MLA, that's fine, just be consistent. If you have one MLA, then they all have to be MLA. The reason I recommend APA is because that's what we use in communication studies. That is our methodology for citing sources. All right. And if you mention it in your reference, you need to make sure that you talk about it in your speech. So that's what those elements are for. Okay. And you can see these are the things we're going to check off, check off, check off. These are the things to be careful that they're not missing. And it's really pretty simple. So let me go over here and look at you guys in the monitor. Do you have any questions for me? Yes, good.
Do you have any more examples for topics?
I do in your later speeches, all right? So yes, there will be a sample outline for all the other speeches. But for this one, I've just given you the one for the elevator speech, and that's just it. I mean, and that template. I mean, you can download the template and fill it all in, and it will, do what you need to do for the speech.
But I mean, like topics, like you were talking about.
Oh, yes, I got topics. Oh, good question. Thank you for that. All right, so let's go back into the resource book. All right, so in your resource book, and let me pull it up again, under 18, scroll all the way down. Click on 18.2. And here are all kinds that you can pick from. So you could do a speech of introduction, which is a tiny little speech that you give as a ceremonial host before another speaker comes on, or to just welcome the guests and give them a quick preview of what the day is going to be about. And there are some examples. So let's keep on scrolling down. There's some outline examples there. You could also do a speech of presentation where this is where maybe you want to identify a person who's receiving an honor. And so you want to talk briefly about this person and why this person is receiving the award. And there is an example. So here's one. Well, you don't want to steal away the show from a winner, as Kanye West did to Taylor Swift in 2009, the MTV Music Awards. There is an example of her speech that she gave for being the best female vocalist. So you can take a look at that. You can do one that's a speech of acceptance, and again, she's got a lot of speeches to view for that. There's a speech of dedication, where you're going to dedicate a building, let's say to the Children's Hospital, or you're going to dedicate the breaking of ground for a new wing of Sandhills Community College, for a new classroom hall, those kinds of things. One of the most common is going to be a toast. Some of you may have already done these, where you've done a toast as a maid of honor or a best man at a wedding. Very common. Toasts are like at retirement dinners, they might be at weddings, they might be at graduation ceremonies, significant anniversary events. So maybe you've got a wedding coming up. You could do your speech for that. Maybe you have, a grandparent or parents who are celebrating a significant milestone for their wedding. You could do something for that, right? Now, a toast is different from a roast, the T and R. Be very careful. Unfortunately, there are many people who give a toast at a special occasion event such as a wedding, and they think they are there to be entertaining, and it turns out to be a roast. That's not cool. That's just not appropriate. Save that for the bachelor party or the bachelorette party. When it's in front of a large group, of mixed group, one of the things that this chapter talks about is that you need to adapt what you say appropriately to your audience. So you have to analyze the audience. What's the age group? Who are the people? Who are the members, the relationships to the people that you might be honoring? And that will give you some good guideline to know what to say and what not to say. So there are some information here about a roast. The Colbert Report did a really fun one for President Bush. And there's all these hyperlinks in this, so you can watch those and get some ideas. There's an example of a eulogy. Some of our students have done eulogies about themselves, which is kind of freaky, because they talk about themselves as if they're dead. But they, if I was to do it, I'd say, so here lies Kathy Kruska. Her students called her Ms. K. She referred to herself as Ms. K. Her daughter called her the crazy lady in training, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you can do something like that. So you can have some fun. A farewell speech. Maybe you are yourself retiring and you want to say farewell to the people that you are leaving, or you are saying farewell to somebody who is moving out of the community or is leaving a position to take on a different job or something like that. Here's a great one. Derek Jeters, if any of you are sports enthusiasts, he gave a really good, excellent goodbye at Yankee Stadium, and you could see, and there's a hyperlink to that one to see that as an example. There's inspirational speeches, speeches of goodwill. You may have to do a public relations speech. You may have to do a big faux pas that you committed, a big mistake, or your company made a mistake and you got to go make an apology. That's a special event kind of thing. I had to do speeches of justification where I had to very shortly in a plant operation justify or explain why we were going to be doing layoffs. Yeah, I was not real popular. But I had to do it in a way, like the video I talked about in last class is, with a lot of heart and feeling to help the people in the transition. So there's some good examples there. Like I said, apologies. Lots of hyperlinks to different kinds. A graduation honor, etc. So does that help give you some answers to your question of the different types? And you can use real names or you can use pretend names. And you may want to do a pretend for yourself. Maybe you are an aspiring actor or actress and you have a dream of receiving an Oscar for best female in a dramatic performance. Go for it. Come up with your acceptance speech. Be ready for it. Start practicing it now so that you can do it in 5 or 10 years. Okay? All right. So, yes, use real names. Have fun with that. Or not. You can use fictitious. That was a good question. Any other questions? Are you feeling good about it? I say a head nod yes and I don't know. Now let me give you a warning. If you are not good at delivering jokes, don't do them. I am the worst joke teller in the world. I would never tell a joke because I would screw it up. So keep that in mind. Now your audience are your classmates, and when you are telling us the over here, excuse me, you need to give us a setting. You're going to have to tell us before you actually deliver your speech on video, who are you talking to? So before you actually begin, it's sort of off camera. You could say, you know, this is a speech I'm giving as a blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah. So tell us who's the audience and, you know, that kind of thing. And then when you're ready to actually deliver the speech, come back on camera and deliver it appropriately. And remember, for that speech, you can cut and paste. You can do that for the first speech and the very last speech. All right. Are we good? Remember, send me questions if you have questions. And one of your classmates had a question which I answered as a part of this lecture. So please send your questions. And you guys are free to go. Goodbye. Watch videos when you're not in class.